Is this the standard we hire now? Olivia Sterling's voice cut through the lobby like a whip. 50 employees froze. The janitor stood motionless, his cleaning cart blocking her path, his head bowed. She stepped closer, close enough to smell the cheap detergent on his uniform. People like you think you're invisible, that no one notices your incompetence. She let the words hang. I notice everything. 6 hours later, that same janitor sat in a hospital chair, a needle in his arm, his blood flowing into a bag. The blood that would save Olivia Sterling's dying daughter. And he knew exactly who she was. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. Is this the standard we hire now? The words exploded across the marble lobby of Sterling Corporation at 7:15 on a Thursday morning. Daniel Carter had heard that voice before. Every employee had. It belonged to Olivia Sterling, CEO billionaire, and the woman whose face appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine twice in the last 3 years. He didn't look up. He kept his hands on his cleaning cart and waited. I'm talking to you. Now he looked up. Olivia Sterling stood 3 feet away. Designer suit. Blonde hair pulled back tight. Eyes like chips of ice. Behind her, 2 assistants clutched tablets and folders, their faces pale with second-hand fear. I'm sorry, ma'am, Daniel said. I'll move it right. You'll move it. That's your response. She laughed, a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. Let me tell you what I see, janitor. I see a cleaning cart blocking executive access. I see equipment scattered like this is some kind of garbage dump. I see someone who clearly has no idea how to do the simplest job in this building. Daniel pulled his cart to the side. It won't happen again. You're right, it won't. Olivia turned to address the lobby, the dozen employees who had stopped mid-stride watching. This is what happens when we lower our standards. This is what happens when we hire people who don't understand that every failure, no matter how small, reflects on this entire company. She turned back to Daniel. Her eyes traveled from his worn shoes, to his calloused hands, to the gray in his hair. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition not of him as a person, but of him as a type. A category. Something beneath her. You know what your problem is. Daniel said nothing. You think you're invisible. You think no one notices whether you do your job well or badly. You think because you push a mop, you don't matter. She stepped closer. Her perfume hit him expensive, suffocating. Let me educate you. Everyone in this building exists to make this company run. The engineers, the accountants, the janitors. If you can't keep a cleaning cart out of my way, what else are you failing at? What corners are you cutting? What messes are you leaving for someone else to clean up? She paused. Let the silence stretch. People like you. You coast through life expecting others to tolerate your mediocrity. Well, not here, not in my building. Daniel felt the heat rising in his chest. He pushed it down. I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am. I don't want your apology. I want competence. She snapped her fingers at the security guard. Earl, I want this reported, and I want to know who supervises the cleaning staff. Clearly someone isn't doing their job. Yes, ma'am. Olivia turned on her heel and walked toward the elevator. Her assistants scurried after her. The doors opened, swallowed them closed. The lobby remained silent. Daniel felt the stares, the pity, the relief on their faces, relief that they weren't him. He finished wiping down the floor, loaded his cart, pushed it toward the service corridor. Behind him, someone whispered, Jesus, she didn't have to do that. Someone else, that's just Olivia, you get used to it. Daniel kept walking. The service corridor was empty. Daniel leaned against the wall, closed his eyes, breathed. People like you. 3 words. That's all it took to reduce a man to nothing. He thought about walking out, quitting, telling Olivia Sterling exactly what he thought of her and her company and her marble floors. Then he thought about Grace, his daughter, 6 years old, waiting for him at daycare, depending on him for everything, food, shelter, medicine, love. Grace needed him to have a job. Grace needed him to swallow his pride and push his cart and be invisible. So that's what he would do. Daniel Carter hadn't always been invisible. 10 years ago, he was an aerospace engineer at Lockheed Martin. He designed guidance systems for satellites. He wore suits to work. He had an office with a window. People called him Mr. Carter and asked for his opinion on technical problems that cost millions of dollars to solve. He had a wife named Sarah, a house in Westerville, a future that looked like a straight line pointing up. Then Sarah got sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 18. Those 18 months cost Daniel everything. His savings gone in the first 3 months. His 401k cashed out to cover experimental treatments. The house sold to pay hospital bills. His car traded for something cheaper, then sold entirely when the bills kept coming. He borrowed from friends, maxed out credit cards, took loans from companies that charged interest rates that should have been illegal. None of it mattered. Sarah died anyway. She died on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Daniel held her hand. She whispered that she was sorry. Sorry for leaving. Sorry for the debt, sorry for the burden. Daniel told her there was nothing to forgive. He meant it, but meaning it didn't pay the bills. After Sarah died, Daniel was left with a mountain of debt and a 3-year-old daughter who didn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home. His engineering career was over. No company would hire someone who'd been absent for 18 months, whose references were outdated, whose desperation showed in every interview. He needed work. Any work. Work that let him pick up Grace from daycare by 300. Sterling Corporation was hiring janitors. Daniel took the job. He didn't complain. He didn't mention his past. He showed up every day, pushed his cart, and disappeared into the background. For 3 years it had worked, until today. Until Olivia Sterling decided to see him. Daniel's shift ended at 2:00 p.m. He changed in the basement locker room, stuffing his uniform into a plastic bag, pulling on jeans and a faded Ohio State sweatshirt. The sweatshirt was old, a graduation gift from his parents, but it still fit, and it reminded him of a time when his future meant something. The bus to Grace's daycare took 45 minutes. Daniel stared out the window and tried not to think. People like you. You think you're invisible. He failed. Grace was waiting by the window. The moment she saw him, her face transformed. Pure joy. Uncomplicated love. The kind of expression that made everything else, the humiliation, the exhaustion, the endless grind of survival, worth it. Daddy! She ran to him, threw her arms around his legs, pressed her face against his thigh. Daniel knelt down and hugged her properly. Hey, sweetheart. How was your day? Good. Miss Patterson said I drew the best rainbow, and Tommy shared his crackers with me, and we learned a song about a caterpillar. Want me to sing it? Maybe on the bus. We've got to hurry. Remember doctor's appointment. Grace's face fell. She didn't like the appointments, the stethoscopes, the needles, the serious faces, but she never complained. Will they stick me again? Maybe. But you'll be brave, right? Right. She straightened her shoulders. Mommy said brave people still get scared. They just do the thing anyway. Daniel's throat tightened. That's exactly right, baby. St. Vincent's Hospital was chaos. The pediatric clinic waiting room was packed, crying babies, exhausted parents, kids running between chairs. Daniel signed Grace in and found 2 seats wedged between a mother with twins and an old man who was snoring. He pulled out Where the Wild Things Are and read to Grace in a low voice. She pressed against his side, her eyes fixed on the pictures, her small hand gripping his sleeve. This was his favorite part of every day. Not the reading, the closeness. The trust. The way Grace looked at him like he was the strongest person in the world. He wasn't. He knew he wasn't. But for her, he would try. Grace Carter. The nurse appeared at 3:15. Daniel lifted Grace onto his hip and followed her down the corridor toward the pediatric cardiology wing. Grace had been born with a heart murmur. Nothing serious, the doctor said, but it needed monitoring. Every month they checked her vitals, listened to her heart, made sure nothing had changed. So far, she'd been lucky. Daniel tried not to think about how long luck lasted. They were passing the emergency entrance when the gurney burst through. "Clear the way! Coming through!" Daniel pressed Grace against the wall as the paramedics rushed past. He caught glimpses, a small form on the stretcher oxygen mask over a gray face, monitors beeping, IV lines trailing. Female, age 7. Acute abdominal hemorrhage, vitals dropping. The gurney disappeared around the corner. Grace stared after it, her eyes huge. "Daddy, is that girl okay?" "The doctors are helping her, sweetheart. That's what they do. Can we pray for her?" Daniel hesitated. Sarah had been the religious one. He'd always been skeptical. But since Sarah died, he'd found himself talking to her sometimes late at night when the apartment was quiet. "Yeah, baby. We can pray." Grace closed her eyes and clasped her hands. Her lips moved silently. When she finished, she looked up at Daniel with absolute confidence. "I asked Mommy to look after her until she gets better." Daniel's eyes burned. "That's perfect, sweetheart." Grace's checkup took 20 minutes. Blood pressure normal, heart rate normal, murmur unchanged. "She's doing beautifully," Dr. Patel said. "No concerns. We'll see her next month." Daniel exhaled. "Thank you. Thank you for being so consistent. I know it's not easy with your schedule." "She's worth it." Dr. Patel smiled. "You're a good father, Mr. Carter." The words hit harder than they should have. After the morning after Olivia Sterling's public destruction of his dignity, the simple acknowledgement that he was doing something right meant everything. "Thank you," he managed. "Really." They were walking back through the corridors when Daniel heard the scream. High, panicked. Then the crash of metal on linoleum. He grabbed Grace's hand and moved faster. He rounded the corner and stopped. A wheelchair lay overturned. Medical equipment scattered everywhere. And on the floor, inches from his feet, lay a little girl. The same girl from the gurney. She was seizing. Her body jerked in violent spasms. Her hospital gown twisted around her. Her face was gray. Blood trickled from where she'd torn out her IV. A nurse knelt beside her, screaming for help. She pulled out her IV. She tried to run. I couldn't catch her. Daniel didn't think. He moved. He set Grace against the wall. "Stay there. Don't move." He dropped to his knees beside the girl, turned her on her side, pulled off his jacket and wadded it under her head, held her steady while the convulsions racked her body. "Get a doctor," he told the nurse. "Now." The nurse ran. Daniel counted. 10 seconds. 15. 20. The girl's back arched. Her hands clawed the floor. A sound escaped her throat, something between a moan and a sob. 30 seconds. 35. "You're okay," Daniel murmured. "I've got you. You're safe." 40 seconds. 43. Then finally the convulsions eased. Her body relaxed. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes opened. Blue. Bright blue. Filled with terror. Her hand found Daniel's wrist and gripped it. "Please." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please don't let me die." Daniel's chest cracked open. "My mommy isn't here. Please, I don't want to die." He thought of Grace watching from against the wall. He thought of Sarah dying in a hospital bed. He thought of all the promises he'd made and couldn't keep. But this girl was looking at him, begging him. "You're not going to die," Daniel said. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise." The medical team arrived. They lifted her onto a gurney, attached monitors, called out readings. Daniel stepped back. His hands were shaking. Grace ran to him, wrapped her arms around his legs. "You saved her, Daddy." Daniel picked her up, held her close, breathed. "The doctors are going to help her now." "But you helped first. You were brave." Brave. He didn't feel brave. He felt hollowed out. But if Grace saw bravery, that was enough. Somewhere behind him, A woman's voice, high frantic, demanded to know where her daughter was. Daniel didn't turn around. He didn't see Olivia Sterling run past mascara streaking her face. He didn't see her collapse against the trauma room door. He didn't know the girl he'd just saved was the daughter of the woman who'd called him invisible. He only knew a mother somewhere was terrified, and a little girl was fighting for her life. The hospital intercom crackled to life. Code red, O-negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. All compatible staff report to donation center. Daniel stopped walking. O-negative. The rarest blood type. His blood type. Grace tugged his sleeve. Daddy, that's your special blood, the kind Mommy had. Daniel looked at his daughter. He thought of the little girl who'd gripped his wrist, who'd begged him not to let her die. Yeah, baby, it is. He took Grace's hand. We need to go help someone. The donation center was on the ground floor, tucked between the cafeteria and the administrative offices. Daniel had passed it 100 times during Grace's appointments, but had never been inside. Today, the hallway outside was packed. Nurses, doctors, hospital staff. All of them crowded around the intake desk, voices, overlapping tension crackling in the air. I'm a positive. Can that work? We need O-negative specifically. I'm sorry. What about O-positive? That's close, right? It's not compatible. I'm sorry. Next, please. Daniel pushed through the crowd, Grace's hand tight in his. A woman in scrubs, the coordinator based on the badge around her neck, stood behind the desk, her face drawn with exhaustion and barely contained panic. Excuse me? Daniel said. The coordinator didn't look up. Blood type. O-negative. Her head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto his face with an intensity that made him take a step back. You're sure? I'm sure. She grabbed his arm. Come with me, now. Wait, my daughter. Bring her. We don't have time. The coordinator pulled Daniel through the crowd past the intake desk into a small examination room in the back. She pointed at a chair. Sit. I need to verify your blood type. It'll take 5 minutes. What's happening? The girl, she's dying. The coordinator's voice cracked. 7 years old. Internal hemorrhage. She's lost too much blood and we're completely out of O-negative. Every hospital in the city is running low. The regional blood center can get us units, but not for 4 hours. She doesn't have 4 hours, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. No. She doesn't. Grace tugged at Daniel's sleeve. Daddy, is this about the girl from before, the one you helped? Daniel looked at his daughter. Her eyes were wide, but not frightened. She trusted him completely. Whatever he decided, she would accept. Yeah, baby. It's about her. Then you have to help her again. Daniel turned back to the coordinator. Test me. The next 5 minutes were the longest of Daniel's life. The coordinator drew blood from his arm, ran it through the testing machine, checked and double-checked the results. Grace sat in the corner, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest, watching everything with solemn attention. Finally, the coordinator looked up. Her expression had changed. The panic was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, something that looked almost like awe. Mr. Carter? Yeah. Your blood isn't just O-negative. You have a rare antigen combination that makes your blood exceptionally compatible. It's found in maybe 1 in 10,000 people. Daniel didn't know what to say. So I can help. You can save her life. The coordinator paused. But I need to be honest with you. The amount of blood this child needs, it's significant. More than a standard donation. We're talking about 2 units, maybe more. That's pushing the limits of what's safe for a single donor. What are the risks? Dizziness, fatigue, possibly fainting. You'll need to rest for several days afterward. Eat iron-rich foods. Monitor yourself for complications. Daniel thought about work, about the shift he was supposed to cover tomorrow morning. About the second job he worked on weekends, stocking shelves at the grocery store 3 blocks from his apartment. Then he thought about the little girl who had gripped his wrist and begged him not to let her die. "I'll do it. Mr. Carter, I need you to understand." "I understand, I'll do it." The coordinator studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her. "Okay, let me get you set up." She led him to the donation room, a small space with 2 reclining chairs monitoring equipment and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. Daniel settled into the chair on the left. A nurse appeared and began prepping his arm, swabbing the inside of his elbow with alcohol, tapping the vein to make it stand out. Grace climbed into the chair beside him, her legs dangling over the edge. "Does it hurt, Daddy?" "Just a little pinch, nothing bad." "You're being brave." "I'm trying." The nurse inserted the needle. Daniel felt the familiar pressure, the strange sensation of blood leaving his body. He watched the crimson flow through the tube into the collection bag and thought about where it would go. Into a little girl's veins, keeping her alive, giving her a chance. He hoped it would be enough. "Mr. Carter." The nurse's voice was gentle. "The coordinator told me about your situation. Your daughter can stay here with you, but if you'd like, we have a children's area down the hall. Volunteers there. Toys, books, that kind of thing." Daniel looked at Grace. "What do you think, sweetheart? Want to go play for a little while?" Grace shook her head firmly. "I want to stay with you." "You sure? This might take a while, and Daddy's going to be pretty boring just lying here." "I don't care. I want to stay." Daniel felt his heart swell. "Okay, baby. You can stay." The nurse smiled. "I'll bring some juice and crackers for both of you." She left. Daniel and Grace sat in comfortable silence, watching the blood flow through the tube, listening to the soft beeping of the monitoring equipment. After a few minutes, Grace spoke. "Daddy." "Yeah." "The girl from before. The one who was scared. Is your blood going to make her not scared anymore?" Daniel considered the question. "I hope so, sweetheart. When people are sick, sometimes they need blood from other people to help them get better. That's what I'm giving her. So part of you will be inside her." "In a way, yeah." Grace nodded, processing this. "That's good, because you're the best daddy. So she'll have some of the best daddy inside her, and that will help her be strong." Daniel blinked hard. His throat was tight. That's a nice way to think about it, baby." "Mommy told me that. She said when people share parts of themselves with other people, it makes everyone stronger. She said that's what love is." Daniel couldn't speak. He just reached out and took Grace's hand, holding it tight while his blood flowed through the tube into the bag that would save a stranger's daughter. The donation took 45 minutes. By the end, Daniel was lightheaded. The room swayed slightly when he moved his head too fast. The nurse had him drink 2 cups of orange juice and eat a package of crackers, but the weakness persisted, a deep, bone-level exhaustion that made his limbs feel like they were filled with sand. "You need to take it easy," the nurse said, removing the needle and pressing a cotton ball to the puncture site. "No heavy lifting for at least 24 hours. No driving, plenty of fluids and rest." "I understand." "Is there someone who can pick you up? You really shouldn't be taking public transit in your condition." Daniel thought about the bus ride home. 45 minutes, 2 transfers, Grace on his lap, because the buses were always crowded at this hour. "I'll be fine," he said. The nurse looked skeptical, but didn't argue. "At least wait in the lobby for a while. Make sure you're stable before you leave." "Okay." Daniel stood slowly, gripping the arm of the chair for support. The room tilted, then steadied. Grace took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his with fierce protectiveness. "I'll help you, Daddy." They made their way out of the donation room, through the hallway toward the main lobby. Daniel's legs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy, unreliable, disconnected from his brain's commands. He was halfway down the corridor when he heard the voice. "Please. Someone, please. They said someone might be able to help." A woman's voice, high, frantic, ragged with desperation. Daniel kept walking. The lobby was just ahead. A few more steps, and he could sit down. Wait for the dizziness to pass. My daughter. She's dying. They said there's a donor, please. Something in the voice made Daniel slow down. Something familiar. Something that tugged at the edge of his memory. He reached the lobby and stopped. The donation center doors were directly ahead. And standing in front of them, her back to Daniel, was a woman in an expensive suit. Her blonde hair had come loose from its severe bun. Her shoulders were shaking. Her voice was barely recognizable, stripped of its authority, its contempt, its ice-cold precision. But Daniel recognized it anyway. The woman turned around. Olivia Sterling. Her face was streaked with mascara. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hands were trembling visibly. She looked like a woman who had been broken into pieces and hastily reassembled. For a moment, she didn't see him. She was scanning the lobby, searching for someone who could save her daughter's life. Then her eyes found his face, and she froze. Daniel watched the recognition dawn in her eyes. He saw the moment she placed him the janitor. From this morning, the man whose dignity she had shattered in front of 50 employees, the man she had called invisible. He saw her mouth open, close, open again. No words came out. Mrs. Sterling. The coordinator appeared beside Daniel, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Good news. We found a donor. A perfect match, actually. Better than perfect, he has a rare antigen combination that makes his blood exceptionally compatible. Olivia's eyes hadn't left Daniel's face. Who? Mr. Carter here. The coordinator gestured at Daniel. He just finished donating. 2 units. Your daughter is receiving the transfusion right now. Her vitals are already stabilizing. Olivia stared at Daniel. Daniel stared back. Neither of them spoke. Grace tugged at Daniel's hand. Daddy, who's that lady? The question broke the spell. Olivia's gaze dropped to Grace, to the small girl with the stuffed elephant, the girl who was looking up at her with innocent curiosity. She's... Daniel paused. She's the mother of the girl I helped. Oh. Grace's face brightened. Your daughter is going to be okay, ma'am. My daddy gave her his blood. He's the bravest person in the whole world. Olivia made a sound something between a laugh and a sob. Her hand came up to cover her mouth. She tried again. I don't. The coordinator frowned, sensing something wrong. Mrs. Sterling, are you all right? Olivia didn't answer. She was staring at Daniel with an expression he couldn't read. Shock, disbelief, guilt, gratitude, all of them tangled together in a knot that seemed to be choking her. How? She finally managed. How are you here? How did you? My daughter had an appointment, Daniel said quietly. I heard the announcement. I came to help. But you... Olivia stopped, swallowed. You know who I am. Yes. You know what I said to you this morning. Yes. And you still... Her voice broke. You still gave your blood. For my daughter. After everything I... She couldn't finish. The tears were coming now, streaming down her face, cutting tracks through her ruined makeup. Daniel looked at this woman, this powerful, wealthy, ruthless woman, and saw something he hadn't expected to see. He saw a mother. Just a mother, terrified and desperate and broken by the possibility of losing her child. No different from any other mother. No different from Sarah, who had fought so hard to stay alive for Grace. Your daughter was scared, Daniel said. She was alone. She needed help. But What you said to me this morning has nothing to do with her. She's a child. She's innocent. She doesn't deserve to die because her mother was cruel. Olivia flinched like he had slapped her. I'm not a saint, Mrs. Sterling. I'm not doing this to make you feel guilty. I'm doing this because a little girl begged me not to let her die, and I have the power to help her. That's all." He paused. The dizziness was getting worse. He needed to sit down. "Your daughter is going to be okay. You should be with her." Olivia stood, frozen tears still streaming down her face. She opened her mouth to say something, an apology maybe, or a thank you, or something else entirely. But Daniel didn't wait to hear it. He took Grace's hand and walked past her toward the row of chairs by the window where he could sit down and rest and wait for the world to stop spinning. Behind him, he heard Olivia's heels clicking on the linoleum, not the confident, commanding rhythm from this morning, but something hesitant and uncertain. He didn't look back. Daniel sat in the hospital lobby for an hour. Grace fell asleep on his lap, her head resting against his chest, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. He watched her sleep and tried not to think about the woman he had just walked away from. It didn't work. Olivia Sterling's face kept swimming before his eyes. Not the cold, contemptuous face from this morning, the broken one. The one with tears cutting through the mascara. The one that had looked at him like he was a ghost, or a miracle, or something she couldn't quite comprehend. "You know what I said to you this morning? And you still gave your blood." Yes, he had. And he would do it again without hesitation, because that little girl's life was worth more than his wounded pride. But that didn't mean the wound had healed. Daniel thought about the morning, the lobby, the stairs, the whispered comments after Olivia had walked away. Poor guy. She didn't have to do that. No, she didn't. But she did it anyway because she could. Because power meant never having to see the humanity in people beneath you. Because people like Daniel were invisible, convenient targets for frustration punching bags who couldn't punch back. He wondered if Olivia Sterling had ever been humiliated in her life. If she had ever stood in front of a crowd of people and felt the weight of their pity. If she had ever gone home at night and replayed someone's words in her head, wondering if they were right, wondering if she really was as worthless as they made her feel. Probably not. People like Olivia Sterling didn't get humiliated. They did the humiliating. Until today. Daniel closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. He was too tired and too wired at the same time, his body drained from the blood donation, his mind buzzing with adrenaline and emotion. At 8:00 p.m., a nurse appeared. "Mr. Carter." Daniel opened his eyes. "Yes. I wanted to let you know the transfusion was successful. The little girl is stable. Dr. Chen says her prognosis is excellent." Relief flooded through him, warm and sweet and overwhelming. Thank God. Mrs. Sterling asked me to convey her gratitude. She wanted to come, thank you personally, but she's with her daughter right now. That's fine. She should be with her daughter. That's where she belongs. The nurse hesitated. She also asked if there's anything she can do for you. Anything at all. Daniel shook his head. I don't need anything. I'm just glad the girl is okay. Are you sure Mrs. Sterling was very insistent? She mentioned arranging a car to take you home, or... A car would be nice, actually. Daniel looked at Grace still sleeping in his lap. I'm not sure I can manage the bus right now. I'll let her know. The nurse left. Daniel sat in the quiet lobby holding his daughter waiting. 20 minutes later, Olivia Sterling appeared. She looked different now. The mascara had been wiped away, leaving her face bare and vulnerable. Her hair was still loose, but she had smoothed it back with her hands. She had removed her suit jacket, and the silk blouse beneath was wrinkled and creased. She looked human. She crossed the lobby slowly, hesitantly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any moment. Mr. Carter. Daniel didn't stand. He couldn't not without disturbing Grace. Mrs. Sterling. I arranged a car. It's waiting outside. There's a car seat for your daughter. Thank you. Olivia stood there, twisting her hands together. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Daniel waited. I owe you an apology, she finally said. Yes, you do. She flinched again. He saw her jaw tighten, saw the flicker of something that might have been anger, the instinctive response of a powerful person who wasn't used to being challenged. But then it faded, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. What I said to you this morning, it was wrong. It was cruel. It was inexcusable. Yes, it was. I judged you without knowing anything about you. I treated you like you were less than human. You called me invisible. Daniel's voice was quiet, but steady. You said people like me think no one notices whether we do our jobs well or badly. You said I was mediocre, incompetent, a failure. Olivia closed her eyes. I remember. Do you know what I was thinking when you said those things? She shook her head. I was thinking about my daughter. I was thinking about the fact that I have a degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State. I was thinking about the aerospace patents that have my name on them. I was thinking about the satellites orbiting the Earth right now that use guidance systems I designed. Olivia's eyes opened. She stared at him with naked shock. I was thinking about my wife who died 3 years ago from ovarian cancer. I was thinking about the medical bills that consumed everything. We had our savings, our house, our future. I was thinking about the 18 months I spent trying to save her, and the moment when I realized that nothing I did would be enough. Daniel's voice cracked. He took a breath and steadied himself. I was thinking about taking this job, this janitor job at your company, because it was the only thing I could find that would let me pick up my daughter from daycare on time. I was thinking about pushing a mop in a building full of engineers who discussed designs I could improve in my sleep. He looked up at Olivia, and for the first time, he let her see the full weight of his exhaustion, his grief, his anger. That's who I was when you called me invisible. A widower, a father, a man who gave up everything to try to save the person he loved and lost her anyway, and picked up the pieces because his daughter needed him to keep going. Olivia was crying again, silent tears streaming down her bare face. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't. No, you didn't, because you didn't bother to ask. You didn't bother to see me as a person. I was just a janitor, just an obstacle, just something in your way. Daniel shifted Grace in his arms. She stirred but didn't wake. My daughter thinks I'm a hero, he said softly. She thinks I'm the bravest person in the world. She doesn't know that most days I feel like I'm barely holding on. She doesn't know that I work 2 jobs and still can't afford health insurance, that I lie awake at night worrying about what will happen if her heart condition gets worse, that sometimes I'm so tired I want to give up. He met Olivia's eyes. But I don't give up. Because she needs me. Because she's the only thing I have left. Because her mother made me promise to take care of her, and I don't break my promises. Olivia sank into the chair across from him. Her face was a ruin of grief and guilt. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I know. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. But I don't know what else to say. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. He thought about what Sarah would say if she were here. She had always been the forgiving one, the one who believed in second chances, who saw the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. People are complicated, she used to say. Even the cruel ones are usually just scared. What was Olivia Sterling scared of? He didn't know. Maybe she didn't know either. The car you arranged, Daniel said finally. That's a good start. Olivia looked up. Hope flickered in her eyes, fragile, uncertain. Is there anything else I can do? Anything at all. Go be with your daughter. That's what she needs right now. That's what you both need. Olivia nodded slowly. She stood smoothing her wrinkled blouse, trying to gather the shattered pieces of her composure. Mr. Carter. Yes. Thank you. For saving her life. For being... She paused, searching for the right word. For being better than I deserve. Daniel looked at her, this powerful, wealthy, broken woman, and felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something else. The beginning of something. Go, he said. Your daughter is waiting. Olivia turned and walked away. Her heels clicked on the linoleum soft, now uncertain, nothing like the commanding rhythm from this morning. Daniel watched her go. Then he lifted Grace gently in his arms and carried her toward the exit, where a black car with tinted windows was waiting to take them home. The drive took 30 minutes. Grace slept the whole way, her small body curled against Daniel's side, her stuffed elephant clutched in her arms. Daniel stared out the window at the city lights sliding past and tried to make sense of the day. This morning, he had been invisible. A janitor. A nobody. A convenient target for a billionaire's frustration. Tonight, he had saved that billionaire's daughter's life. The irony was almost too much to process. The car pulled up in front of his apartment building, a squat brick structure in a neighborhood that real estate agents called transitional and everyone else called poor. The driver got out and opened Daniel's door. "Mr. Carter, can I help you with your daughter?" "No, I've got her, thank you." Daniel carried Grace up the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment. His legs were shaking by the time he reached the top. His arms burned with the effort of holding her, but he made it. He always made it. He unlocked the door, carried Grace to the bedroom they shared, and laid her gently on the bed. She stirred as he pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Daddy, I'm here, baby. Are we home?" "We're home." She smiled sleepily. "Good. I like home." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Daniel kissed her forehead and stepped back. He watched her drift off again, her breathing slow and steady, her face peaceful. Then he walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and sat down at the small table by the window. His hands were trembling. His whole body was trembling. The exhaustion hit him all at once, physical, emotional, spiritual. Everything he had held together through the blood donation, through the confrontation with Olivia Sterling, through the car ride home, all of it came crashing down. Daniel put his head in his hands and wept. He wept for Sarah, who should have been here to see their daughter grow up. He wept for Grace, who deserved so much more than a father who was barely holding on. He wept for himself, for the man he used to be, the man he had become, the man he was still trying to figure out how to be. He wept until there was nothing left. Then he wiped his face, finished his water, and went to lie down on the couch. Tomorrow, he would have to go back to work, back to Sterling Corporation, back to the marble lobby and the invisible uniform and the knowledge that Olivia Sterling knew who he was now. He didn't know what that would mean, didn't know if anything would change, didn't know if today had been a turning point or just a strange detour in a life that would continue exactly as before. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. His daughter was safe. A little girl was alive because of him. And somewhere in the city, a mother was sitting by her child's hospital bed, holding her hand, thanking God for a second chance. That was enough. It had to be enough. Daniel closed his eyes and let the exhaustion pull him down into sleep. Daniel didn't go to work the next morning. He woke at 4:30, his body running on autopilot, but when he tried to stand, the room spun so violently that he had to grab the arm of the couch to keep from falling. The blood donation had taken more out of him than he had realized. His head pounded. His limbs felt like they were made of wet concrete. Even breathing seemed to require more effort than usual. He called in sick for the first time in 3 years. "You sound terrible," his supervisor said over the phone. "Take the day. Get some rest." "I will, thank you." "Carter." "Yeah." "I heard what happened yesterday. What you did at the hospital. Word travels fast around here." Daniel closed his eyes. Of course it did. Of course the whole company already knew. It wasn't a big deal. The hell it wasn't. You saved that little girl's life. Mrs. Sterling's daughter, no less. A pause. "I also heard what she said to you in the lobby yesterday morning, before all this happened." Daniel said nothing. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have said something. Should have stood up for you. It's fine. It's not fine. But I appreciate you saying that." Another pause. "Take care of yourself, Carter. We'll see you when you're ready." The line went dead. Daniel set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Word travels fast. By now, everyone at Sterling Corporation probably knew the story. The janitor who got publicly humiliated by the CEO. The janitor who then saved the CEO's daughter's life. He wondered what they were saying about it. Whether they thought he was a hero or a fool. Whether Olivia Sterling had said anything, done anything, acknowledged what had happened in any public way. He wondered if it mattered. Grace woke at 7 Huzuri, padding out of the bedroom in her pajamas, her stuffed elephant trailing behind her. "Daddy, why are you still here?" Daniel pulled her onto the couch beside him. "I'm taking a day off, sweetheart. I wasn't feeling too good after giving all that blood yesterday." "Are you sick?" "Just tired. I'll be fine by tomorrow." Grace studied his face with the intensity of a doctor examining a patient. "You look pale. Like a ghost." "Thanks, baby. That makes me feel great. I'll take care of you." She said it with complete seriousness, like she was accepting a sacred responsibility. "I'll make you breakfast, and bring you juice, and read you stories. That's what you do when I'm sick, so that's what I'll do for you." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." They spent the day together. Grace made him toast, slightly burned, but he ate every bite and brought him juice in the special cup she usually reserved for herself. She read him stories from her picture books, doing all the voices the way he did for her, making him laugh, despite the exhaustion that weighed him down. In the afternoon, they watched cartoons on the small TV in the living room. Grace curled up against his side, her head on his shoulder, her small hand holding his. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby." "The lady from the hospital. The one whose daughter you saved. Was she the same lady who was mean to you?" Daniel hesitated. He had hoped Grace hadn't understood what was happening in that lobby, that she had been too young or too distracted to pick up on the tension. He should have known better. Grace noticed everything. "Yeah, sweetheart, she was." "Why was she mean to you?" "I don't know, baby. Sometimes people are mean because they're scared or stressed or unhappy. It doesn't make it right, but that's usually why." Grace considered this. "Mommy said hurt people hurt people." "She did say that." "So maybe the lady was hurt inside, and that's why she was mean." Daniel looked at his daughter, 6 years old, wise beyond her years, carrying her mother's compassion in her small heart. "Maybe, baby. Maybe. Are you still sad about what she said?" "A little?" "You shouldn't be." Grace sat up and looked at him with fierce determination. "You're the best daddy in the whole world. You saved that little girl's life. You're a hero. Who cares what some mean lady thinks?" Daniel pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair to hide the tears that had sprung to his eyes. "You're right, sweetheart. Who cares?" But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Words had power. Humiliation left scars. And no matter how many lives you saved, you couldn't unsay the things that had been said to you. Across the city, Olivia Sterling sat in the hospital room where her daughter was sleeping. Sophie had come through the surgery beautifully. The internal hemorrhage had been repaired. The blood transfusion had worked. The doctors were optimistic about a full recovery. But Olivia couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything except sit by Sophie's bed and replay the events of the past 24 hours in her mind. The lobby, the janitor, the words she had thrown at him like weapons, the blood donation center, his face when he saw her, the look in his eyes, not hatred, not anger, but something worse, recognition, understanding, the look of a man who had expected nothing better from her. And then, in the lobby afterward, the things he had told her. His wife, the cancer, the medical bills that had consumed everything, the aerospace patents with his name on them, the satellites orbiting the Earth that used guidance systems he had designed. Olivia had spent her entire career learning to read people, to understand their motivations, their weaknesses, their fears. She prided herself on seeing through facades, on knowing what people really wanted. But she had looked at Daniel Carter and seen nothing. Just a janitor. Just an obstacle. Just another faceless worker in the machine of her company. She had been so wrong. "Mrs. Sterling." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Chen wanted me to let you know that Sophie's latest vitals look excellent. She should be able to go home in a few days." "Thank you." The nurse hesitated. "Is there anything I can get you? Coffee? Something to eat?" "No, thank you." The nurse left. Olivia turned back to Sophie, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor. She thought about what Daniel had said, about his daughter, about working 2 jobs and still not being able to afford health insurance, about lying awake at night worrying about what would happen if her heart condition got worse. Sterling Corporation employed over 4,000 people. How many of them were like Daniel Carter? How many of them were struggling, suffering, drowning in medical bills and debt? How many of them came to work every day, did their jobs, and went home to lives that Olivia had never bothered to imagine? She didn't know. She had never asked. "People like you." Her own words echoed in her head, taking on a new and terrible meaning. "You think you're invisible." He wasn't invisible. He had never been invisible. She had just chosen not to see him. That was worse. That was so much worse. Olivia put her head in her hands and wept. The board meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. Friday morning. Olivia had known it was coming. She had abandoned a critical investor presentation to rush to the hospital. She had left Robert Chen, the CFO, to handle questions he wasn't prepared to answer. She had put her personal life ahead of company interests. In the world of corporate leadership, that was an unforgivable sin. She arrived at Sterling Corporation headquarters at 8:45 after spending 2 nights in the hospital with Sophie. She hadn't slept more than a few hours. Her suit was wrinkled. Her hair was hastily pulled back. She looked nothing like the polished, intimidating CEO who usually commanded the boardroom. She didn't care. The boardroom was full when she entered. 8 faces arranged around the mahogany table, none of them friendly. Harold Weston, the chairman, sat at the head, his expression carved from granite. "Olivia, please sit down." She sat. "I assume you know why we've called this meeting." "I do. Your departure Wednesday caused significant concern among our institutional investors. Robert did his best to reassure them, but questions were raised about your commitment to this company, about your judgment, about your priorities." Olivia listened without responding. She had prepared for this, had rehearsed her explanation, marshaled her arguments, planned her defense. But sitting here now looking at these faces, these people who saw her only as a function of quarterly earnings, she felt something shift inside her. "My daughter almost died," she said quietly. Harold nodded. "We understand that, Olivia, and we're glad she's recovering. But this company employs over 4,000 people. Their livelihoods depend on stable leadership, on investors who trust us to put the business first." "I know. So what do you have to say for yourself?" Olivia looked around the table. She saw impatience, disappointment, barely concealed contempt. These were people who prided themselves on never letting personal matters interfere with business. People who had missed births and funerals and anniversaries for the sake of the company. People she realized exactly like her. "I have spent 15 years proving my commitment to this company," she said slowly. "I've sacrificed birthdays and recitals and school plays. I've missed first steps and first words and first days of school. I've given this company everything, and I told myself it was worth it because I was building something important." She paused, feeling the words take shape. "Wednesday afternoon, a janitor saved my daughter's life." Harold frowned. "I'm not sure what that has to do with—" "A janitor I had humiliated that very morning. A man I had called invisible. A man I had treated like he was worthless simply because he pushed a mop instead of sitting in a corner office." The boardroom was silent. "His name is Daniel Carter. He has a degree in mechanical engineering. He has patents with his name on them. He used to design guidance systems for satellites, but when his wife got sick, when the medical bills consumed everything he had, He took the only job he could find, a janitor position at this company. He did it because he has a daughter who depends on him, a 6-year-old girl with a heart condition who needs regular medical care that he can't afford because we don't offer health insurance to our cleaning staff. Harold shifted uncomfortably. Olivia, this man gave 2 pints of his blood to save my daughter. He did it knowing who I was, knowing what I had said to him, knowing that I had treated him like garbage in front of 50 of our employees. Olivia stood, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Do you want to know why he did it? I asked him. Do you know what he said? No one answered. He said, she's a child. She was scared. She needed help. That's it. No conditions, no demands, no strategic calculations, just basic human decency, the kind of decency I had completely forgotten existed. She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. So you can remove me from this board if you want. You can replace me with someone who never lets personal matters interfere with business. But I'm done pretending that being powerful means being cruel. I'm done treating people like they're invisible because they're not important enough to matter. I'm done running a company that chews people up and spits them out without ever seeing them as human beings. Harold's face was unreadable. What exactly are you proposing? Change. Real change. Health insurance for every employee, not just the executives. Flexible scheduling for parents. Emergency assistance programs for people dealing with medical crises or family emergencies. A company that treats its workers with dignity, regardless of their position. That would cost. I know what it would cost. I also know what it costs when we don't do it. It costs us people like Daniel Carter, brilliant, talented, dedicated people who could be contributing so much more if we just gave them a chance. She straightened her jacket, feeling more certain than she had felt in years. You can support me in this, or you can replace me. But I'm not the woman I was on Wednesday morning. That woman was a monster, and I'm not going to be her anymore. She walked out of the boardroom, leaving 8 stunned faces behind her. Daniel returned to work on Monday. He arrived at 5:30, the same as always. Changed into his uniform, the same as always. Loaded his cart with supplies, the same as always. But nothing felt the same. The other janitorial staff treated him differently now. Not badly, if anything, they were friendlier than before, but differently. They looked at him with something that might have been awe or curiosity or respect. Heard what you did, Carter? One of them said. That was something else. I just helped someone who needed help. Yeah, well, not everyone would have helped that particular someone. Not after what she did to you. Daniel shrugged. What was I supposed to do? Let a little girl die. The man had no answer for that. The morning passed slowly. Daniel cleaned the executive floors, avoiding the main lobby as much as possible. He didn't want to run into Olivia Sterling. Didn't want to see her face, or hear her voice, or deal with whatever complicated emotions their encounter had stirred up. But at 11:00, his supervisor found him in the 3rd-floor break room. Carter, Mrs. Sterling's office, now. Daniel felt his stomach drop. What? She wants to see you, personally. Why? I don't know. But when the CEO asks to see you, you go. Daniel put down his mop, straightened his uniform, tried to calm the hammering of his heart. Okay. Where's her office? Top floor. Her assistant will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride felt endless. Daniel watched the numbers climb 10, 15, 20, 25, and tried to imagine what Olivia Sterling could possibly want from him. An apology. She had already apologized. A thank you. She had already thanked him. Something else. The doors opened onto a reception area that screamed money. Expensive art on the walls. Leather furniture. A reception desk that probably cost more than Daniel earned in a year. A young woman in a tailored suit stood waiting. Mr. Carter, I'm Ms. Sterling's assistant. Please follow me. She led him down a hallway and through a set of double doors into an office the size of Daniel's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, and behind the desk sat Olivia Sterling. She looked different than she had in the hospital, more composed, more like the woman who had humiliated him in the lobby. But there was something in her eyes, something uncertain, something almost vulnerable that hadn't been there before. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Please sit down." Daniel sat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk. He didn't speak. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked to see you." The thought crossed my mind. Olivia's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "I deserved that. You deserve a lot of things." "I know." She stood and walked to the window, her back to him. "I've spent the last 4 days thinking about what happened, about what I said to you, about what you did for Sophie, about everything. And I realized something." She turned to face him. "I've been running this company for 15 years. I've made decisions that affected thousands of people's lives. I've hired and fired, promoted and demoted, praised and criticized. But I never once stopped to ask myself what it felt like to be on the other end of my words, my decisions, my power." Daniel said nothing. "You asked me in the hospital why I was cruel to you. I didn't have an answer then. I do now." "I'm listening." "Fear." The word seemed to cost her something. "I was afraid. I'm always afraid. Afraid that if I show any weakness, any softness, any humanity, people will see me as less than, as vulnerable, as someone who can be pushed around." She laughed bitterly. "So I push first. I attack first. I make sure everyone knows that I'm in charge, that I'm powerful, that I'm not someone to be crossed. And I tell myself it's necessary, that it's just business, that it's nothing personal." She met Daniel's eyes. "But it is personal, isn't it? Every word I say lands on a human being, a person with their own life, their own struggles, their own pain. And I just never bothered to see that." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. He wasn't ready to forgive her, not yet, not completely, but he could feel his anger beginning to soften. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I owe you more than an apology. I owe you an explanation, and I owe you an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Olivia walked back to her desk and sat down. She picked up a folder and slid it across the desk toward Daniel. "Open it." Daniel opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a job offer. His eyes scanned the text, and his heart stopped. Position Director of Employee Support Services. Salary, $120,000 per year. Benefits: full medical, dental, and vision coverage for employee and dependents. He looked up at Olivia. "What is this?" "A new position I'm creating. We're going to completely restructure how this company treats its employees, especially the ones who've been invisible for too long. We're going to offer health insurance to every worker, regardless of position. We're going to create support programs for parents, for people dealing with medical crises, for anyone who's struggling." She leaned forward. "And I want you to help me design it. You know what these employees need because you've lived it. You've been one of them. I can throw money at programs all day, but without someone who understands the reality, it'll be nothing but corporate PR." Daniel stared at the paper. His hands were trembling. "This isn't charity," Olivia continued. "This is a real job. A job that uses your skills, your experience, your engineering background. You'll be solving problems, just different kinds of problems than you used to solve." "Why me?" "Because you're the only person who's ever made me feel ashamed of who I am. Because you showed me what real courage looks like. Because you saved my daughter's life when you had every reason to let her die." Her voice cracked slightly. "And because I think you might be the only person in this entire company who will tell me the truth, even when I don't want to hear it." Daniel looked at the offer. He thought about Grace, about the health insurance that would cover her heart condition, about the salary that would let them move out of their cramped apartment, about the chance to do meaningful work again, to use his mind instead of just his hands. He thought about Sarah, who had always believed in second chances. He thought about the lobby 5 days ago, the humiliation, the shame, the words that had cut him to the bone. "I have conditions," he said. Olivia nodded. "Name them." "The program has to be real, not just PR, not just a way to make you look good. If I tell you something needs to change, you have to actually change it." "Agreed." "And you have to treat your employees differently, all of them, not just the ones you're trying to impress. I don't ever want to see what happened to me in that lobby happen to anyone else." Olivia's face was pale. "I understand. One more thing." "What?" Daniel met her eyes. "You have to mean it. Not just say it, mean it. If this is just about making yourself feel less guilty, I'm not interested. But if you're serious about changing, about becoming a better person, a better leader, then I'll help you." Olivia was silent for a long moment. Daniel watched her face, looking for any sign of insincerity, any hint that this was just another calculated move. What he saw instead was something that looked almost like hope. "I mean it," she said softly. "I don't know if I can change. I've been this way for so long that I'm not sure I know how to be anything else. But I want to try. I want to be someone my daughter can be proud of, someone I can be proud of." She paused. "Will you help me?" Daniel looked at the job offer one more time. He thought about all the years of struggle, all the sacrifices, all the invisible work he had done just to keep his head above water. And he thought about what it might mean to finally be seen. "Yeah," he said. "I'll help you." Olivia's face transformed. Relief, gratitude, and something that might have been joy flooded her features. "Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter." "Daniel." She blinked. "What?" "My name is Daniel. If we're going to work together, you should probably use it." Something shifted between them. Not friendship, not yet, but the beginning of something. "Daniel." Olivia repeated like she was trying on a new word. "Thank you, Daniel." He stood and extended his hand. She took it. Her grip was firm but not aggressive. Not the grip of a CEO asserting dominance. Just a handshake between two people starting something new. "One more thing," Daniel said. "Yes. My daughter made a card for Sophie. She wanted to give it to her personally, but I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate. Would it be okay if—" "Yes." Olivia's eyes glistened. "Sophie's been asking about the man who saved her. She'd love to meet both of you." Daniel nodded. "Then I guess we have a lot to talk about." He turned and walked toward the door. Behind him, he heard Olivia's voice. "Daniel?" He stopped, turned. "I know I said it before, but I really am sorry. For what I said to you. For who I was." Daniel looked at her, this woman who had tried to crush him, who had now offered him a lifeline. "I know," he said. "And I think I might be able to forgive you, someday." He walked out of the office, leaving Olivia Sterling staring after him with tears streaming down her face. Daniel didn't go to work the next morning. His body wouldn't let him. When the alarm rang at 4:30, he reached out to silence it and found that his arm weighed 1,000 pounds. The room spun when he opened his eyes. His head pounded like someone was driving nails into his skull. He called in sick for the first time in 3 years. "Carter!" His supervisor sounded surprised. "You okay?" "Blood donation yesterday. Took more out of me than I expected." "Right, I heard about that." A pause. "Everyone's heard about that." Daniel closed his eyes. Of course they had. "Take the day. Take 2 if you need them." And Carter, "Yeah. What you did, that was something. I don't know if I could have done it. Not after what she said to you." Daniel didn't respond. He just hung up and let the phone drop onto the couch beside him. Grace appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes, her stuffed elephant dangling from one hand. "Daddy, you're still here." "I'm taking a day off, sweetheart. Daddy's tired." Grace crossed the room and climbed onto the couch beside him. She pressed her small hand against his forehead, the way he always did when she was sick. You're not hot, but you look like a ghost. Thanks, baby. That's very comforting. I'll take care of you. She said it with the seriousness of a surgeon accepting a critical case. I'll make you toast and bring you juice and read you stories. That's what you do when I'm sick. Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. That sounds perfect. They spent the day together on the couch. Grace made him toast burned on one side, cold on the other, and he ate every bite. She read him stories from her picture books, doing all the voices the way he did for her, making him laugh, despite the exhaustion that pressed down on him like a physical weight. In the afternoon, she curled up against his side and asked the question he'd been dreading. Daddy, the lady from the hospital, the one who was crying. Was she the same lady who was mean to you? Daniel hesitated. He'd hoped she hadn't understood. He should have known better. Grace noticed everything. Yeah, sweetheart. She was. Why was she mean? I don't know, baby. Sometimes people are mean because they're scared or stressed or unhappy inside. Grace considered this. Mommy said hurt people hurt people. She did say that. So maybe that lady was hurt inside, and that's why she said mean things. Daniel looked at his daughter, 6 years old, carrying her mother's wisdom in her small heart. Maybe, baby, maybe. Are you still sad about what she said? A little. You shouldn't be. Grace sat up and looked at him with fierce determination. You're the best daddy in the whole world. You saved that little girl. You're a hero. Who cares what some mean lady thinks? Daniel pulled her into a hug, hiding his face in her hair. You're right, sweetheart. Who cares? Across the city, Olivia Sterling hadn't slept in 36 hours. She sat in a chair beside Sophie's hospital bed watching her daughter breathe. The monitors beeped steadily. The doctor said Sophie was doing beautifully. The surgery had been successful. The blood transfusion had worked. Full recovery expected. But Olivia couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything except replay Daniel Carter's words in her head. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills consumed everything. I have patents with my name on them. Satellites orbiting the Earth right now use guidance systems I designed. That's who I was when you called me invisible. She had looked at him and seen nothing. A janitor, an obstacle, a convenient target for her frustration. She had been so wrong. Mommy. Sophie's voice was weak but clear. Olivia jerked upright. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Where's the man? The one who helped me? He went home, sweetheart. He has a daughter of his own to take care of. Is he coming back? Olivia hesitated. I don't know, baby. Maybe. I want to thank him. He promised he wouldn't let me die, and he didn't. Olivia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I know, sweetheart. I want to thank him too. Sophie reached out and took her mother's hand. Her grip was weak but warm. Mommy, why are you crying? I'm just happy you're okay, baby. That's all. But it wasn't all. It wasn't even close to all. And Olivia knew that no matter how many tears she cried, she couldn't wash away what she had done. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Olivia knew it was coming. She had abandoned a critical investor presentation. She had left Robert Chen to answer questions he wasn't prepared for. She had put her daughter ahead of the company. In the corporate world, that was an unforgivable sin. She arrived at Sterling Corporation at 8:45, running on caffeine and adrenaline. Her suit was wrinkled. Her hair was hastily pinned back. She looked nothing like the polished CEO who usually commanded the boardroom. She didn't care. Harold Weston, the chairman, was waiting when she walked in. 8 board members sat around the mahogany table. None of them looked happy. Olivia, sit down. She sat. I assume you know why we've called this meeting. I do. Your departure Wednesday caused significant concern. Robert handled the investors, but questions were raised about your judgment, your priorities, your commitment to this company. Olivia listened. She had prepared her defense, rehearsed her arguments, marshaled her excuses. But sitting here now looking at these faces, people who saw her only as a function of quarterly earnings, something shifted inside her. "My daughter almost died," she said quietly. Harold nodded impatiently. "We understand that. We're glad she's recovering. But this company employs 4,000 people. Their livelihoods depend on stable leadership." "I know. So what do you have to say for yourself?" Olivia looked around the table. She saw impatience, disappointment, thinly veiled contempt. And suddenly she didn't care. "I've spent 15 years proving my commitment to this company," she said. "I've missed birthdays, recitals, school plays, first steps, first words. I've given this company everything. I told myself it was worth it because I was building something important." She paused. "Wednesday afternoon, a janitor saved my daughter's life." Harold frowned. "I don't see what that has to do with a janitor I had humiliated that very morning. A man I called invisible. A man I treated like garbage because he pushed a mop instead of sitting in a corner office." The room went silent. "His name is Daniel Carter. He has an engineering degree. He has patents with his name on them. He used to design guidance systems for satellites. But when his wife got cancer, when the medical bills consumed everything, he took the only job he could find. A janitor position here. Because he has a 6-year-old daughter who depends on him." Olivia stood. "This man gave 2 pints of blood to save my daughter. He did it knowing who I was, knowing what I said to him, knowing I had humiliated him in front of 50 employees." She looked around the table. "Do you know why he did it?" I asked him. He said, "She's a child. She was scared. She needed help. That's it. No conditions. No demands. Just basic human decency. The kind I had completely forgotten existed." Harold shifted uncomfortably. "Olivia?" "I'm not finished." Her voice was sharp. "This company needs to change. We need to treat our employees, all of them, with dignity. Health insurance for every worker. Flexible scheduling for parents. Emergency support programs. A company that sees human beings, not just productivity units. That would cost. I know what it would cost. I also know what it costs when we don't. We lose people like Daniel Carter. Brilliant, dedicated people who could contribute so much more if we gave them a chance." She gathered her papers. "You can support me in this, or you can replace me. But I'm done pretending that being powerful means being cruel. I'm done treating people like they're invisible." She walked out, leaving 8 stunned faces behind her. Daniel returned to work on Monday. He arrived at 5:30, the same as always. Changed into his uniform. Loaded his cart. Started cleaning. But nothing felt the same. The other janitorial staff treated him differently. Not badly, if anything more friendly than before, but differently. They looked at him with something like awe. "Heard what you did, Carter," one of them said. "That was something else. I just helped someone who needed help." "Yeah, well, not everyone would have helped that particular someone. Not after what she did to you." Daniel shrugged. "What was I supposed to do? Let a little girl die?" The man had no answer for that. At 11:00, Daniel's supervisor found him on the 3rd floor. "Carter, Mrs. Sterling's office, now." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What?" "She wants to see you, personally." "Why?" "I don't know. But when the CEO asks, you go." Daniel put down his mop, straightened his uniform, tried to calm his racing heart. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors opened, a young woman in a tailored suit was waiting. "Mr. Carter, please follow me." She led him down a hallway and through a set of double doors. The office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk the size of a boat, and behind it sat Olivia Sterling. She looked different, more composed than at the hospital, but there was something uncertain in her eyes, something almost vulnerable. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Please sit." Daniel sat. He didn't speak. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked to see you." The thought crossed my mind. Olivia's lips twitched, almost a smile. I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things. I know. She stood and walked to the window. I've spent the last 4 days thinking about what happened, what I said to you, what you did for Sophie. And I realized I've been running this company for 15 years without ever asking what it feels like to be on the other end of my words, my power. She turned to face him. You asked me why I was cruel. I have an answer now. I'm listening. Fear. The word seemed to cost her something. I'm always afraid. Afraid that if I show any weakness, people will see me as vulnerable, as someone who can be pushed around. So I push first. I attack first. I tell myself it's just business, nothing personal. She laughed bitterly. But it is personal. Every word lands on a human being. Someone with their own life, their own pain. I just never bothered to see that. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. He wasn't ready to forgive her, but he could feel his anger beginning to soften. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you more than an apology. Olivia walked back to her desk and picked up a folder. She slid it across to him. Open it. Daniel opened the folder. Inside was a job offer. His eyes scanned the text and his heart stopped. Position Director of Employee Support Services. Salary $120,000 per year. Benefits. Full medical, dental, and vision coverage for employee and dependents. He looked up. What is this? A new position. We're restructuring how this company treats its employees. Health insurance for everyone. Support programs for parents. Emergency assistance for people dealing with crises. She leaned forward. I want you to help design it. You know what these employees need because you've lived it. I can throw money at programs all day, but without someone who understands the reality, it's just PR. Why me? Because you're the only person who's ever made me feel ashamed of who I am. Because you showed me what real courage looks like. Because you saved my daughter when you had every reason to let her die. Her voice cracked. And because you're the only person in this company who will tell me the truth. Even when I don't want to hear it. Daniel looked at the offer. He thought about Grace. About health insurance that would cover her heart condition. About a salary that would let them move out of their cramped apartment. About doing meaningful work again. He thought about Sarah, who had always believed in second chances. He thought about the lobby, the humiliation, the words that had cut him to the bone. I have conditions, he said. Olivia nodded. Name them. The program has to be real, not just PR. If I tell you something needs to change, you actually change it. Agreed. You have to treat your employees differently. All of them. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. I understand. One more thing. What? You have to mean it. If this is just about making yourself feel less guilty, I'm not interested. But if you're serious about changing, really changing, then I'll help. Olivia was silent for a long moment. Daniel watched her face, looking for any sign of insincerity. What he saw instead was hope. Fragile, uncertain hope. I mean it, she said softly. I don't know if I can change. I've been this way for so long. But I want to try. I want to be someone my daughter can be proud of. She paused. Will you help me? Daniel looked at the job offer. He thought about all the years of struggle, all the invisible work, all the sacrifices, and he thought about what it might mean to finally be seen. Yeah, he said. I'll help you. Olivia's face transformed. Relief flooded her features. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Daniel. What? My name is Daniel. If we're going to work together, you should use it. Something shifted between them. Not friendship, not yet, but the beginning of something. Daniel, she repeated. Thank you, Daniel. He stood and extended his hand. She took it. Her grip was firm but not aggressive. Just a handshake between two people starting something new. One more thing, Daniel said. Yes, My daughter made a card for Sophie. She wanted to give it to her personally. Would that be okay? Olivia's eyes glistened. Sophie's been asking about you. She'd love to meet you both. Daniel nodded. Then I guess we have a lot to talk about. He turned and walked toward the door. Daniel. He stopped, turned. I really am sorry for who I was. Daniel looked at her, this woman who had tried to crush him, who had now offered him a lifeline. I know, he said, and someday I think I might be able to forgive you. He walked out, leaving Olivia Sterling staring after him with tears streaming down her face. The first time Grace and Sophie met, they stared at each other for exactly 7 seconds. Daniel counted. He couldn't help it. The silence stretched across the hospital room like a wire pulled too tight, and he found himself holding his breath, wondering if this had been a mistake. Sophie was sitting up in her hospital bed, still pale but stronger than she had been. Her blonde hair was tangled, her hospital gown wrinkled, but her blue eyes were sharp and curious. Grace stood at Daniel's side, clutching the handmade card she had spent 3 hours creating. Construction paper, crayons, glitter that had gotten everywhere and would probably never come out of the apartment carpet. Hi, Sophie said finally. Hi, Grace said back. You're the girl whose daddy saved me. Yeah. He gave me his blood. The nurses said it's inside me now. Grace nodded solemnly. That means part of my daddy is inside you. So we're kind of like sisters now. Sophie's eyes widened. She looked at Olivia, who stood frozen by the window, her face unreadable. Is that true, Mommy? Are we sisters now? Olivia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I suppose in a way you could think of it like that. Sophie turned back to Grace with a brilliant smile. I always wanted a sister. Me too, Grace said. I made you a card. It has flowers on it, and a rainbow, and 2 girls holding hands. That's us. She walked to Sophie's bed and held out the card. Sophie took it carefully, like it was made of glass instead of construction paper and dried glue. It's beautiful, Sophie whispered. This is the best card anyone ever gave me. Really? Really? Will you sign it? So I can remember who made it. Grace beamed. She found a crayon in her pocket, purple, her favorite color, and carefully wrote her name in wobbly letters at the bottom of the card. There. Now you won't forget me. I could never forget you, Sophie said. You're my sister now. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. He looked at Olivia across the room and saw tears streaming silently down her face. For a moment, their eyes met. And in that moment, something passed between them, an acknowledgement that whatever had happened before, whatever wounds still needed to heal their daughters, had just decided to be family. The Sterling Carter Single Parent Initiative launched 6 weeks later. Daniel threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. For 3 years he had been surviving, just surviving day to day, paycheck to paycheck, holding everything together by sheer force of will. Now, for the first time since Sarah's death, he was building something. He met with employees across every department: janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers. The people who kept Sterling Corporation running but never got invited to meetings, never got asked for their opinions, never got seen as anything more than functions. He asked them what they needed. He listened to their answers. He took notes in the same battered notebook he used to use for engineering calculations. My kid has asthma, a maintenance worker named Marcus told him. I can't afford the inhaler he needs, so I give him half doses and pray it's enough. My mother has dementia, a receptionist named Linda said. I have to leave early twice a week for her appointments. My supervisor docks my pay every time. I got diagnosed with diabetes last year, an electrician named Frank said. I haven't been to a doctor since because I can't afford the copay. I just hope I don't die before my son graduates high school. Daniel wrote it all down. Every story, every struggle, every quiet tragedy playing out behind the polished facade of Sterling Corporation. And then he brought those stories to Olivia. They met twice a week in her office. Daniel laid out the problems he had discovered, the gaps in coverage, The punitive policies, the thousand small cruelties that added up to a system designed to squeeze every drop of productivity from workers while giving nothing back. Olivia listened. At first, Daniel could see her instinctive defensiveness, the CEO reflex, to justify, to explain, to minimize. But each time she caught herself, swallowed her excuses, asked what needed to change. Frank Rodriguez, Daniel said during their third meeting. Electrician, 22 years with the company, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes last year. He hasn't seen a doctor in 11 months because our health plan has a $3,000 deductible he can't afford. That's the industry's standard deductible, Olivia said automatically. Then she stopped, shook her head. No, I'm doing it again, making excuses. Yes, you are. What do we need to do? Lower the deductible, cap out-of-pocket expenses, actually make the insurance usable for people who live paycheck to paycheck. The board will fight me on the cost, then fight back. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile crossed her face. You're not afraid of me at all anymore, are you? I was never afraid of you. No, I suppose you weren't. She picked up her pen and started writing. Lower deductible, capped expenses. What else? They worked late into the evening. When Daniel finally left the building at 8:00 p.m., he found Grace waiting for him in the lobby with Olivia's assistant, who had been watching her while they worked. Daddy, I drew pictures of satellites. Ms. Chen helped me look up what they look like. Daniel scooped her into his arms. Did you have fun? So much fun. Can I come back tomorrow? We'll see, sweetheart. He carried her out of the building, past the marble floors he used to mop, past the elevators he used to clean around, past the reception desk, where he used to be invisible. He wasn't invisible anymore. Sophie came home from the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia called Daniel that evening, her voice thick with emotion. She's home. She's okay. She's actually okay. That's wonderful news. She's been asking about Grace. Every day. When can she see her sister again? Daniel smiled. Her sister. That's what they've decided. Who am I to argue? Saturday I could bring Grace to visit, if that's okay. A pause. You would do that? Come to my home. Sophie almost died. She wants to see the one person who seems to understand what she went through. I'm not going to deny her that because her mother and I have history. Another pause. Longer this time. Daniel. Yeah. I don't deserve your kindness. You know that, right? Maybe not, but Grace and Sophie deserve each other, and that's what matters. Saturday morning, Daniel and Grace took the bus across town to Olivia's neighborhood. The houses got bigger as they traveled. Lawns got greener. Cars got shinier. By the time they reached Olivia's address, Grace was pressing her face against the bus window in amazement. Daddy, these houses are huge. Do kings live here? Something like that, sweetheart. Olivia's house was at the end of a cul-de-sac. Iron gates. Long driveway. More windows than Daniel could count. That's a really big house, Grace said quietly. Is Sophie rich? Her family has money. Yes. Oh. Grace thought about this. But she was still scared in the hospital. Being rich didn't help her not be scared. Daniel knelt down and looked his daughter in the eyes. That's right, baby. Money can't buy everything. It can't buy health. It can't buy love. It can't buy the feeling of having a friend who really cares about you. I care about Sophie. I know you do, and that's worth more than any amount of money. The gates opened. Olivia was walking down the driveway, Sophie beside her, moving carefully but steadily. The moment Sophie saw Grace, her face transformed. Grace, you came! Grace broke away from Daniel and ran. The two girls collided in a hug that nearly knocked Sophie over. Careful, sweetheart, Olivia said. Remember, you're still healing. I don't care. Sophie set her arms tight around Grace. I missed you so much." "I missed you too." Grace pulled back and studied Sophie's face. "You look better. You're not gray anymore. The doctor said I'm getting stronger every day. Soon I'll be able to run and play and do everything. Then we can play together. Every day. Every day." Daniel and Olivia stood watching their daughters, two adults bound together by circumstances neither could have predicted. "Thank you for coming," Olivia said quietly. "It means more than you know. Thank you for inviting us. Would you like to come inside? I could make coffee, or tea, or whatever you drink." Daniel hesitated. Crossing the threshold of Olivia Sterling's home felt like crossing a line he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. But Grace was already pulling Sophie toward the house, chattering about the pictures she had drawn and the stories she wanted to tell, and Daniel realized that some lines had already been crossed without his permission. "Coffee would be fine," he said. They spent 3 hours at Olivia's house. The girls played in Sophie's room, their laughter echoing through the halls. Daniel and Olivia sat in the kitchen drinking coffee, talking about the initiative, about work, about everything except the lobby and the humiliation and the words that still hung between them like smoke. At some point, the conversation shifted. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia said. "Depends on what it is." "Your wife, Sarah. What was she like?" Daniel set down his coffee cup. He hadn't expected that question, hadn't prepared for it. She was everything good about me," he said finally. "Every decent impulse I have, every kind thing I do that's her. She taught me that people are worth believing in even when they don't deserve it." "Is that why you helped Sophie?" "Even after what I did. Partly. Mostly it's just, I couldn't not help. A child was dying. I had the power to save her. It wasn't a choice. It was just what had to happen." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I've never thought like that. For me, everything is a calculation. Cost versus benefit. Risk versus reward. Even my relationships, especially, my relationships are strategic." "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission seemed to surprise her. "I didn't realize how lonely until this week, until Sophie almost died, and I realized that if I lost her, I would have nothing. No one. Just an empty company and a board that would replace me within a month." Daniel didn't know what to say. He had spent so long seeing Olivia Sterling as a villain, cold, cruel, unreachable, that this glimpse of vulnerability threw him off balance. "You have Sophie," he said finally. "That's not nothing." "I know, but I've been such a terrible mother, always working, always distracted, always prioritizing the company over her." Olivia's voice cracked. "The last thing I said to her before she collapsed was that I couldn't attend her school play because I had an investor meeting. An investor meeting, Daniel. While my daughter was bleeding internally, I was worried about quarterly projections." "You didn't know she was sick." "That's not the point. The point is that I should have been there. I should have noticed something was wrong. Instead, I was so focused on work that I missed all the signs." She wiped her eyes. "What kind of mother does that?" Daniel thought about all the times he had felt like a failure as a parent. All the moments when he was too tired, too stressed, too overwhelmed to be the father Grace deserved. "The kind who's trying to do too much," he said. "The kind who thinks she has to be perfect at everything. The kind who forgets that being present is more important than being successful." Olivia looked at him. "How do you do it? How do you balance everything?" "I don't. I just show up every day and do the best I can. Some days my best isn't very good, but Grace knows I love her. She knows I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. I want to do better, for Sophie, for everyone." "Then do better. It's not complicated, it's just hard." Olivia laughed a real laugh, not the bitter sound he had heard before. "You make it sound so simple." Simple isn't the same as easy. The simplest things are often the hardest. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sound of their daughters laughing upstairs. "I'm glad you're here, Daniel," Olivia said. "I'm glad you gave me a chance I didn't deserve." "Everyone deserves a chance. That's what Sarah used to say." "She sounds like an extraordinary woman." "She was. I wish I could have met her. She would have terrified you." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Because she would have seen right through you. All the armor, all the defenses, all the corporate ruthlessness. She would have looked at you and seen the scared little girl underneath. And she would have called you out on it, gently, but firmly." "That does sound terrifying." "She made me a better person. Every day she made me better." Daniel paused. "I like to think she's still doing that. Through grace. Through the way she taught me to see people." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe that's what you're doing for me," she said finally. "Making me better, whether I want you to or not." Daniel didn't know how to respond to that, so he just picked up his coffee and took another sip. Upstairs, Grace shrieked with laughter at something Sophie said. The sound echoed through the house like music. The program launched on a Monday morning in early November. A stage had been set up in the main lobby of Sterling Corporation, the same lobby where Daniel had been humiliated just 2 months ago. Banners announced the Sterling Carter Single Parent Initiative. Rows of chairs filled the space occupied by employees from every department. Daniel stood beside Olivia on the stage, uncomfortable in the suit she had insisted on buying him. "This is your program as much as mine," she had said. "You should look the part." Olivia stepped to the microphone. The lobby fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know you're wondering why I called this meeting. Some of you might be worried. When the CEO calls an all-hands meeting, it usually means layoffs or restructuring or some other corporate doublespeak for bad news." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "But that's not why we're here today. We're here because this company needs to change, and I need to change with it." She paused, scanning the faces before her. 2 months ago, something happened that made me take a hard look at who I've become. Most of you have heard the story by now. The janitor who saved my daughter's life after I had publicly humiliated him that very morning. Daniel felt the weight of hundreds of eyes shifting to him. He forced himself to stand still. His name is Daniel Carter. He's standing beside me now. And if it weren't for him, my daughter Sophie would be dead. The lobby was utterly silent. But more than that, if it weren't for Daniel, I would still be the same person I was 2 months ago. Cruel, dismissive, convinced that power meant never having to see the humanity in the people around me. Olivia's voice cracked slightly. She steadied herself. "Daniel taught me something I should have learned a long time ago. Dignity is not earned. It is inherent. Every person who walks through these doors, every janitor, every security guard, every cafeteria worker, every assistant deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be treated with respect." She gestured at the banners above them. "The Sterling Carter Single Parent Initiative is our first step toward becoming the kind of company that treats its people right. Full health insurance for every employee regardless of position. Flexible scheduling for parents. Emergency assistance for anyone dealing with a medical crisis. A commitment to seeing the human beings behind the job titles." She stepped back from the microphone and turned to Daniel. "This program exists because of Daniel Carter. He designed it. He fought for it. And he's going to make sure it actually works, because he's the kind of person who doesn't let promises become empty words." She nodded at him. "Daniel, would you like to say something?" Daniel approached the microphone, his heart pounding. He wasn't good at speeches. He was good at fixing things, solving problems, working with his hands. But these people deserve to hear from him. "I'm not going to stand here and pretend I know exactly what all of you are going through," he said. "Every struggle is different. Every family is different. Every situation is different." He looked out at the crowd, the janitorial staff in the back, the executives in the front, everyone in between. "But I know what it feels like to be invisible. I know what it feels like to work 2 jobs and still not be able to afford a doctor's visit for your kid. I know what it feels like to choose between paying rent and buying medicine." He paused. "My daughter has a heart condition. For 3 years I've been terrified that something would happen to her, and I wouldn't be able to afford the treatment. That fear never went away. It just sat in my chest every single day, making it hard to breathe." He felt tears threatening, but pushed them back. "This program won't solve everything. I know that. But it might make things a little easier. It might mean one less parent has to choose between a doctor's appointment and a paycheck. It might mean one less child grows up wondering why their parent is always tired and stressed and scared." He looked at Olivia, who was watching him with tears streaming down her face. "That's worth something. That's worth everything." The lobby erupted in applause. Daniel stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed by the sound. People were standing, cheering. Some of them were crying. Olivia moved to his side. She didn't say anything. She just stood there shoulder to shoulder with him, facing the crowd together. After the ceremony, people lined up to shake Daniel's hand. Janitors he had worked alongside for 3 years. Security guards who had nodded at him in the early morning hours. Cafeteria workers who had served him coffee on his breaks. "Thank you, Carter. This means everything." "My wife cried when I told her about the insurance." Cried man. Happy tears. "You didn't forget us. You got up there and you didn't forget where you came from." Daniel shook every hand, accepted every hug, let their gratitude wash over him like warm water. He thought about Sarah, about the life they had planned together, about the future that had been stolen from them. This wasn't the future he had imagined, but maybe, just maybe, it was the future that was meant to be. 3 months passed. The Sterling Carter initiative grew from a promise into a reality. Daniel worked 12-hour days meeting with employees, refining policies, fighting bureaucratic resistance at every turn. Some battles he won, some he lost. But every week, the program expanded, reaching more people, changing more lives. Frank Rodriguez finally saw a doctor. His diabetes was under control, now managed with medication the company insurance covered. He stopped Daniel in the hallway one morning, tears in his eyes, and said, "My son asked me yesterday if I was going to be around for his wedding someday. First time I could honestly say yes." Linda Martinez got approved for flexible scheduling. She could leave early twice a week for her mother's appointments without losing pay. "I don't feel like a criminal anymore," she told Daniel. "I don't have to lie or sneak around or pretend I'm sick. I can just be a daughter taking care of her mother." Marcus Thompson's son got the full-dose inhaler he needed. The asthma attacks stopped. Marcus showed Daniel a video on his phone of his boy running in a soccer game, laughing free. "That's because of you," Marcus said. "That's because of the program." Same thing. Daniel didn't argue. He just watched the video again and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Grace and Sophie became inseparable. Every weekend, one family visited the other. Sometimes Daniel and Grace took the bus across town to Olivia's mansion. Sometimes a company car picked them up. Daniel still wasn't comfortable with that, but Grace loved the leather seats and drove them there. Other times, Olivia and Sophie came to Daniel's apartment. The first time, Olivia had stood in the doorway, taking in the cramped space, the second-hand furniture, the cracks in the ceiling, and Daniel had braced himself for judgment. Instead, she had said, "It feels like a home. It's small. It feels loved. That's more important." Sophie had immediately asked to see Grace's room. The two girls disappeared, and minutes later, laughter echoed through the thin walls. "I grew up in a house smaller than this," Olivia said quietly, surprising him. "Before my father's company took off, before the money, before everything changed." "I didn't know that." "Nobody does. It doesn't fit the narrative. Billionaire CEO born with a silver spoon." She shrugged. "The truth is messier. The truth always is." They sat at Daniel's small kitchen table, and drank instant coffee. The expensive stuff Olivia was used to didn't exist in his pantry, and talked about their childhoods, their fears, their failures. The conversation felt strange and fragile, like handling something precious that might shatter at any moment. But it didn't shatter. It grew. By December, Daniel realized that Olivia Sterling had become something he never expected. A friend. Sophie's 8th birthday party was held on a Saturday afternoon at Olivia's house. Grace had spent 3 days making a present, a scrapbook filled with drawings, photos from their hospital visits, ticket stubs from the movies they had seen together. Every page was decorated with stickers and glitter and Grace's careful handwriting. "Do you think she'll like it?" Grace asked nervously on the drive over. "She'll love it," Daniel said. "Because you made it, and because it's from your heart. What if she has too many presents, and mine gets lost?" "It won't get lost. It's the most important one." "How do you know?" "Because it's the only one that tells the story of your friendship. All the other presents are just things. Yours is a memory." Grace considered this, then she nodded satisfied. The party was bigger than Daniel expected. Dozens of children from Sophie's school, their parents milling around with glasses of champagne, a professional entertainer making balloon animals in the corner. Daniel felt out of place in his department store suit among the designer dresses and tailored jackets. But Sophie spotted them immediately and ran across the lawn. "Grace, you're here." The girls hugged like they hadn't seen each other in months instead of days. "Happy birthday, Sophie. Did you bring a present?" "I made you something, but you can't open it until later. It's special." Sophie's eyes widened with excitement. "How special?" "The most special." Olivia appeared beside Daniel, watching the girls with a soft expression. "She's been talking about Grace's present all week," she said. "I tried to tell her that the gifts from the other children would be impressive too, electronics, designer clothes, the latest toys, but she just shook her head and said those were just things. Grace's present would be from the heart." Daniel smiled. "She heard that from me." "I figured. You've been a good influence on both of them." "I'm not sure I've influenced Sophie at all." "You'd be surprised." Olivia turned to look at him. "She talks about you constantly. Mr. Daniel this, Mr. Daniel that. She told her class that you're a hero who saved her life with magic blood." "Magic blood?" "She's 8. Everything is magic at 8. The party continued. Daniel stayed on the periphery, watching Grace play with the other children, watching Olivia move through the crowd with practiced ease. She was in her element here, smiling, networking, playing the role of gracious hostess. But every few minutes her eyes would find his across the lawn, and something in her expression would soften. Late in the afternoon, Sophie opened her presents. The pile was enormous. Tablets and headphones and clothing and toys, hundreds of dollars of merchandise opened and set aside with polite thank yous. The other parents nodded approvingly. Their children had given appropriately impressive gifts. Then Sophie reached Grace's scrapbook. She opened it slowly, turning the pages one by one. The lawn went quiet. Even the adults stopped talking, watching the birthday girl study each page with intense concentration. When Sophie reached the last page, she looked up at Grace with tears streaming down her face. "This is the best present anyone has ever given me," she whispered. "Ever." She jumped up and ran to Grace, wrapping her arms around her in a fierce hug. The other children stared confused. Their expensive gifts sat forgotten on the lawn. Daniel felt Olivia's hand touch his arm. "You've raised an extraordinary child," she said quietly. "She raised herself," Daniel replied. "I just tried not to get in the way." "That's not true, and you know it." He didn't argue. He just watched his daughter hug her best friend and felt his heart swell until he thought it might burst. Christmas Eve fell on a Wednesday that year. Daniel had been dreading it since Thanksgiving. The holidays were always hard. Sarah had loved Christmas more than any other time of year, the decorations, the music, the excuse to spoil Grace with presents and affection. Without her, the season felt hollow, a reminder of everything they had lost. But this year, Grace had other ideas. "Can Sophie come for Christmas?" she asked one morning over breakfast. "And her mommy? They could come here, and we could all be together." "Sweetheart, I don't think—" "Please, Daddy. Sophie said her mommy never really does Christmas. They just eat dinner at a restaurant and go home. That's sad. Nobody should be alone on Christmas." Daniel looked at his daughter. 6 years old, wiser than anyone, had a right to be. "I'll ask Mrs. Sterling," he said finally, "but it's up to her." He called Olivia that afternoon, feeling ridiculous as he extended the invitation. She was a billionaire. She could spend Christmas anywhere in the world, Paris, the Caribbean, a ski resort in Switzerland. Why would she want to spend it in a cramped apartment on the wrong side of Columbus? But Olivia's voice cracked when she answered. "Really, you're inviting us?" Grace insisted. She said nobody should be alone on Christmas. A long pause. "I haven't had a real Christmas since my father died, 23 years ago. I always thought the holiday was overrated, commercialized, a waste of time. And now I think maybe I was just saying that because I didn't have anyone to spend it with." "So you'll come?" "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "We'll come." They arrived at 5:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Daniel had spent all day preparing. He had borrowed a folding table from a neighbor to extend the kitchen table. He had cooked Sarah's recipes: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, apple pie from scratch. The apartment smelled like his childhood, like his marriage, like everything good he had ever known. Grace had decorated every surface she could reach. Paper snowflakes taped to the windows. A small artificial tree in the corner draped with lights and ornaments she had made herself. Hand-drawn Santas and reindeer on construction paper covering the walls like wallpaper. When Olivia walked in, she stopped just inside the doorway and stared. "Grace did most of it," Daniel said. "She wanted it to feel like a real Christmas." "It does." Olivia's voice was thick. "It feels exactly like a real Christmas." Sophie pushed past her mother and ran to Grace, the two girls immediately disappearing into the bedroom to play. Olivia set down the bag of presents she had brought too many. Daniel noticed, but he didn't say anything and stood awkwardly in the middle of the living room. "Can I help with anything?" she asked. "You can pour the wine. Glasses are in the cabinet above the sink." "I can do that." They worked side by side in the tiny kitchen, moving around each other with an ease that surprised Daniel. Olivia found the glasses, opened the wine, set the table, while Daniel finished preparing the food. The radio played Christmas carols softly in the background. "This feels strange," Olivia said suddenly. "What does being here, doing this, being normal?" She laughed. "I don't know how to be normal. I've been the CEO for so long that I forgot how regular people live." Regular people eat dinner and spend time with people they care about. That's pretty much it. It sounds so simple when you say it. It is simple. That's the whole point. They ate dinner together at the extended table. Grace and Sophie chattered constantly, talking over each other, laughing at jokes only they understood. Daniel and Olivia sat across from each other, exchanging glances, letting the warmth of the moment wash over them. After dinner, they opened presents. Sophie loved everything: the toys from Olivia, the books from Daniel, the handmade jewelry from Grace. Grace squealed over the art supplies Olivia had brought immediately, spreading them across the floor and starting to draw. Then Daniel pulled out one last gift, a small box wrapped in silver paper. "This is for you," he said, handing it to Olivia. She looked surprised. "You didn't have to open it." She unwrapped the paper, carefully opened the box, and went still. Inside was a photograph in a simple wooden frame. It showed their two families standing together in front of the Sterling Corporation building on the day of the program launch. Daniel and Olivia in the center, Sophie and Grace in front of them, all four of them, smiling. Beneath the photograph, Grace had written in her careful handwriting, "Our family." Olivia stared at the picture for a long time. When she finally looked up, tears were streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. This is the best gift anyone has ever given me. She laughed through her tears. I keep saying that, but it keeps being true. She stood across the room, and before Daniel knew what was happening, she was hugging him. Her arms wrapped around his shoulders, her face pressed against his neck, her body shaking with silent sobs. Daniel froze for a moment. Then slowly he hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For saving Sophie, for giving me a chance, for showing me what family really means. You showed yourself, Daniel said. I just opened the door. She pulled back, wiping her eyes, laughing at herself. Look at me, crying on Christmas Eve like a child. Nothing wrong with crying. It means you're alive. Is that another thing Sarah used to say? Yeah, it is. Olivia smiled a real smile, warm and unguarded and beautiful. I wish I could have met her. She would have liked you, eventually, after giving you a very hard time first. I probably would have deserved it. Definitely. They both laughed. Across the room, Grace and Sophie looked up from their art supplies with matching expressions of confusion. What's so funny? Grace asked. Nothing, sweetheart, Daniel said. Just grown-up stuff. Grown-up stuff is weird, Sophie announced. The weirdest, Olivia agreed. The girls went back to their drawing. Daniel and Olivia stood together watching them, neither of them speaking, but both of them understanding. Something had changed between them. Something that went beyond gratitude or obligation or the shared experience of almost losing a child. Something that felt like the beginning of something else. New Year's Eve brought snow. Daniel and Grace stood at the window of their apartment, watching the flakes drift down through the streetlights. It was 11:45 p.m. past Grace's bedtime, but Daniel had made an exception. It was a special night. Daddy? Yeah, baby. This was the best year ever. Daniel looked at his daughter, 6 years old, soon to be 7, growing so fast that sometimes it took his breath away. Even though we were sad sometimes, he asked, even though it was hard. Mommy says being sad and being happy aren't opposites. She says you can be both at the same time. When did she tell you that? In my dreams. I dream about her sometimes. She tells me things. Daniel's throat tightened. What else does she tell you? She says she's proud of you. She says you're doing a good job. She says to keep going even when it's hard. She said all that. Grace nodded solemnly. And she said that it's okay to love new people, that loving new people doesn't mean you love her less. It just means your heart is getting bigger. Daniel pulled his daughter into his arms and held her tight. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Your mommy was the smartest person I ever knew, he said. I know. That's why I listened to her. They stood together in the window, watching the snow, waiting for midnight. At 11:58, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Happy New Year. Thank you for making this the best year I can remember. He typed back, same. Here's to next year. Her response came immediately. Here's to next year. And all the years after that. Daniel smiled. He set the phone down and picked up Grace so she could see the fireworks starting in the distance. Happy New Year, Daddy, she said. Happy New Year, sweetheart. I love you. I love you too, more than anything. More than satellites. Way more than satellites. Grace giggled. More than chocolate ice cream. More than all the chocolate ice cream in the world. More than everything, Grace. More than everything that has ever existed or will ever exist. You are the most important thing in my life, and you always will be. Grace wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. Outside, the fireworks exploded in bursts of color against the snowy sky. A new year was beginning. A new chapter was starting. Daniel thought about everything that had happened in the past few months. The humiliation in the lobby, the blood donation, Sophie's small hand gripping his wrist, begging him not to let her die, Olivia's tears in the hospital, the job offer, the program launch, Christmas Eve in his cramped apartment, two families becoming one. He thought about Sarah watching over them from wherever she was. Proud of him. Proud of Grace. Proud of the man he was still becoming. He thought about the future, uncertain and terrifying, and full of possibility. And for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't afraid of it. The Sterling Carter Single Parent Initiative celebrated its first anniversary on a crisp Monday morning in November. The ceremony was held in the same lobby where everything had begun. The same marble floors Daniel had once mopped. The same elevators he had been told to stay away from. The same space where Olivia Sterling had called him invisible. But everything was different now. A banner hung above the stage, 1 year of seeing each other. The lobby was packed. Employees from every department, their families, members of the press. The initiative had become national news, a model for other corporations to follow. Sterling Corporation's stock price had actually risen. It turned out that treating employees well was good for business. Daniel stood beside Olivia on the stage, still uncomfortable in suits, but no longer feeling like an imposter. He belonged here now. He had earned his place. Olivia stepped to the microphone. 1 year ago, I stood in this lobby and called a man invisible. The crowd went silent. I called him invisible because I couldn't see him. I couldn't see past my own power, my own fear, my own desperate need to be in control. I looked at a human being and saw an obstacle, a problem, a nuisance. She paused, letting the words settle. That man saved my daughter's life. He gave his blood to save her. And then he gave something even more valuable, his time, his wisdom, his vision for what this company could become. She turned to Daniel. Daniel Carter is not invisible. He never was. I was just too blind to see him. She faced the crowd again. This initiative exists because one man had the courage to help someone who didn't deserve it. Because one man believed that dignity is not earned, but inherent. Because one man showed me that the measure of a person is not how they treat those above them, but how they treat those below. She stepped back from the microphone. Daniel, this is your day. Tell them what it means. Daniel approached the microphone slowly. He looked out at the crowd, the faces he knew. The faces he didn't. The sea of humanity that had gathered to celebrate something he had helped create. A year ago I was mopping floors, he said. That's not a metaphor. I was literally mopping floors. I did it for 3 years because it was the only job I could find after my wife died, and the medical bills consumed everything I had. He paused. I want to tell you something about mopping floors. When you push a mop for 8 hours a day, you have a lot of time to think. And what I thought about mostly was my daughter. How I was going to keep her fed. How I was going to keep her healthy. How I was going to be the father she deserved when I felt like I was barely surviving. He looked at Grace, who was sitting in the front row beside Sophie. Both girls were watching him with identical expressions of pride. This initiative isn't about me. It's about every parent who has ever had to choose between their child's health and their job. It's about every worker who has ever felt invisible. It's about every human being who deserves to be seen and valued regardless of what they do for a living. He straightened. We've helped over 1,000 families this year. 1,000. That's 1,000 people who didn't have to choose between medicine and rent. 1,000 people who got to be there for their kids' doctor appointments without losing their paycheck. 1,000 people who finally felt like they mattered. He looked at Olivia, who was crying silently. But we're not done. We're never done. Because somewhere out there right now, there's another parent mopping a floor, or cleaning an office, or stocking a shelf, wondering if they're ever going to get ahead. Wondering if anyone sees them. Wondering if their life matters. He faced the crowd one final time. It does. You matter. You are seen. And as long as I have anything to say about it, you will never be invisible again. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, after the handshakes and photographs and interviews, Daniel found himself alone with Olivia in her office. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. We did it, she said quietly. We did. I never thought I could change. I spent so many years being one thing that I forgot I could be anything else. People change all the time. It just takes courage. Olivia turned to face him. You gave me that courage. You know that, right? I think you always had it. You just needed someone to remind you. She crossed the room and stood before him, close enough that he could see the tears in her eyes. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Okay? When Sophie was in the hospital, when I thought I was going to lose her, I made a promise to God, or the universe, or whatever's out there. I promised that if she survived, I would become a better person. I would stop being cruel. I would start seeing people. And you have. But that's not all I promised. She took a breath. I promised that if I ever found someone who made me believe in myself again, I wouldn't let them go. I wouldn't push them away like I've pushed away everyone else in my life. Daniel's heart was pounding. Olivia, I know this is complicated. I know we have history. I know I don't deserve you. She laughed through her tears. God knows I don't deserve you, but I need you to know that you've changed everything for me. Not just professionally, personally. You've made me want to be someone worthy of being loved. Daniel stood very still. He thought about Sarah, about Grace, about all the years of grief and struggle and survival. And he thought about the future Sarah had told Grace about in her dreams. The future where loving new people didn't mean loving old ones less. The future where his heart could grow big enough to hold it all. Olivia, he said, I'm not ready to. I know, I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. But, he continued, I'm not saying no either. I'm saying, let's see what happens. Let's keep building what we're building. Let's give this time. Olivia's face transformed. Hope bloomed in her eyes like sunlight breaking through clouds. I can do that. I can wait. Good. Because Grace and Sophie would never forgive us if we mess this up. Olivia laughed a real laugh, full and warm and alive. No, they wouldn't. They stood together at the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere down there, people were going about their lives working, struggling, loving, losing, finding their way. People like Daniel had been a year ago. People who felt invisible. But they weren't invisible. Not anymore. Thank you, Daniel, Olivia said quietly. For what? For seeing me. When I couldn't see myself. Daniel didn't respond. He just reached out and took her hand. Outside, the sun was setting over Columbus. Another day ending. Another chapter closing. But not the story was just beginning. He thought about Grace waiting downstairs with Sophie probably causing chaos in the lobby. He thought about Sarah watching over all of them. He thought about all the invisible people he had promised to see, and all the work that still remained. And he smiled, because he finally understood what Sarah had meant all those years ago, when she told him that love was sharing parts of yourself with other people. It wasn't just about blood or sacrifice or grand gestures. It was about showing up, every day, for the people who needed you. It was about seeing the humanity in everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. It was about forgiveness and second chances, and the stubborn belief that people could change. Daniel Carter had given his blood to save a stranger's daughter. But in the end, he had received something far more valuable in return. He had received a family, and that was worth more than anything.